Intro to project controls. Last time we talked extensively about time and money and how they are interrelated, not just in construction, but life in general, I think, right? Schedule and budget are distinct disciplines, but they live together. Um, think about it as a couple, right? Whose marriage is not going so well. So now they live together, but they just live in separate bedrooms. They're still married, but they're just in separate bedrooms. Changes to schedule on a project affects the budget, right? For instance, if your project was originally to be completed in 12 months, and now for some reason you need to complete it in 15 months, your costs will immediately go up. So you better have those additional funds. And similarly, changes to a budget will also affect the schedule. For instance, if you originally had $1 million to build a gymnasium in 5 months, and then all of a sudden your client tells you that you need to accelerate it done in 2 months. Well, there's a high labor cost associated with this accelerated schedule. So your budget's going up. Money and time, they're married, just like I said earlier today. One affects the other. And if there's not a therapist to help them balance each other, then the project manager and the client is living themselves exposed to disaster. It's like opening a can of worms. But to avoid disaster, there needs to be a system for measuring and controlling the project performance. And this system will control the project performance against the anticipated performance, if that makes sense. And it's called project controls. And project controls is not a one-time thing during a project. It occurs starting at inception of the project until it is fully closed out and turned over to maintenance. It's an ongoing task, and it starts very early because you cannot wait until the middle of the project or the end of the project to figure out that what you planned for on paper is not good. We discussed it before. On a project has a pre-established budget and a pre-established schedule, and you ought to stay within those brackets. So I think finally, project controls in simple terms is just a process of measuring and controlling progress towards what was originally planned. You start with creating a plan, then you control the progress, then you can evaluate any deviations from the original plan, and finally you take corrective action when those deviations occur so that you can realign your project. Project control is an activity fully controlled by the project manager if you're working for a client at an individual level, meaning one client, one project, or project control can also be controlled by a team of project controllers if you're working at a program level. And again, at a program level, the project manager is out there busy with several projects. So project control is a management tool to keep the project on budget, on time, and on schedule. So today we're going to learn what is a schedule, what is a cost estimate, what is a budget, and how a project manager and a project controller manages all these disciplines. So construction, it's mathematically simple, but it can be logically challenging, right? And in construction, we have many different types of schedules. Some are very complex, some are very simple. I'm the type of guy who likes to be right in the middle, not too easy and not too hard. I like making it challenging, but simple enough that anyone can read and understand my schedule. Because a lot of times you have clients and stakeholders that are not construction savvy folks, and you want to make sure they understand your schedule as well. The construction schedule is used as the main vehicle by which the project team conveys to the owner and the stakeholders a plan that will satisfy the contract requirements. And the schedule, it's a leave-in tool. You know, you use it every day during the duration of the project. Sometimes you update it daily to reflect the current progress against your baseline. And this is really the only way for you to know if you're on schedule, behind schedule, ahead of schedule. It's part of project controls, and that's why scheduling is so important. The most common type of schedule is the bar chart, what you're seeing on the screen right now. It's called the Gantt chart. Gantt because that's someone's last name. The guy who invented the Gantt chart, his name was Henry Gantt. That's why it's called the Gantt chart. And the bar chart is very useful because, you know, it lists the activities, the durations, and it has a nice visual here on the right for each activity. It's a graphic representation of each plan. And on the top of the graphic session, right here on top, there's this row showing the time, the days, the weeks, months, quarters. You can actually customize it as you please. So I'm not going to let this become a scheduling session. Perhaps we can do another session for scheduling, but let's just look at a couple of examples and discuss how they're put together, and then we'll move on. So this particular schedule you're looking at, it's called a milestone schedule. It reflects the duration of an entire project, the whole project. And this is created by you guys, project managers. And when you create this schedule, you take into account all of the project stages that we discussed last time, right? Starts with conception, your feasibility study, and it takes you all the way out to conclusion when you open the facility. And this is what you use to manage yourself and to orchestrate the project team. Sometimes, you know, this is shared with your client, the stakeholders, and eventually even the public. That's why it needs to be simple enough so that it can be understood by everyone. So always make sure that your project schedule is sharp and updated. This next sample is a construction schedule. No, this one is created by the general contractor when he is awarded the project. You know, during procurement, we've given the GC a reasonable construction duration. And the GC now develops his schedule around the timeline that you gave him. And this schedule will tell us whether or not our expectations can be met. What the GC does is he lists every activity that will occur during the duration of the project. And then this schedule will also be used and updated sometimes on a daily basis, preferably on a daily basis. This is the GC telling himself and telling us how well or how bad he's doing out there. And a schedule can get pretty large depending on the size of the project, right? A $20 million project could have up to 100 pages, right? A $50 million project could have well over 500 pages on a schedule. The GC is listing literally all the activities. But for the purpose of today's call, you know, suffice to know that in scheduling, you need to understand a few terms that are grouped together, and they're called interdependencies. Remember the word interdependencies. Some of these interdependencies are finish to start, start to start, start to finish, finish to start, and In scheduling, when you have a scheduling class, you'll also learn what's a predecessor, a successor, but I think those two words are self-explanatory. So for today, this is all I want y'all to know, right? Let's start with finish to start. A good example of finish to start is installing drywall. It makes sense that you cannot install drywall until you have framed and insulated your walls. And then start to start. An example could be leveling concrete. When you see those trucks pouring the concrete, you see those guys with a rake evenly spreading the concrete around and leveling the concrete. It's a concurrent relationship, pouring the concrete and leveling the concrete. They cannot start leveling the concrete until you start pouring it. So it's a start to start relationship. Finish to finish, I can't think of a good example right now, but let's just stick to the description. Task B can only finish when task A has finished. And then start to finish, I also can't think of a good example, but just know that task B, on a start to finish relationship, task B can only finish when task A has already started. And then in scheduling, you'll also learn the terms successor, predecessor, milestones, constraints, lag, float. But I think that's enough for scheduling today. For now, I just want y'all to stay with the basic. So let's talk about estimating a little bit. A good estimate is just as important as a schedule. Again, time and money. In your careers, to choose this career, you know, you'll hear those two terms almost every day: budget and schedule. It's the union of both your schedule and money that will allow your project and you, project manager, to be successful. During the feasibility phase, right? Step one, feasibility phase. The owner will usually hire a third-party estimator who will estimate the potential costs of the project based on historical data. And then during procurement, aka the bidding phase, the interested general contractors will estimate the construction costs based on the drawings provided by y'all's architect. And so very often you'll encounter estimates that are called unit prices. And a unit price estimate follows a system called CSI master format. The CSI master format, it's recognized throughout the entire construction industry. It's a construction guide for everyone. So shortly in y'all's careers, you'll realize that everything in construction revolves around the CSI format. You know, it keeps things standard, it keeps things consistent, no matter where you are in the country. So CSI format. And it's also an easy way to break down construction by subdivisions. So division 1, that's general requirements. Division 2, existing conditions. Division 2, that's your concrete. Division 4, masonry. 5, metals. 6, that's your wood, plastic, composites. Division 7, thermal and moisture protection. Think of Division 7 as the roof of your house. Division 8 is all the openings, the doors, the windows. Division 9 is the finishes, all the tile, the type of floor that you have. And Division 10 is specialties, you know, like bike racks, etc. Division 11, equipment. Division 12, furnishings. Division 13, special construction. 14, conveying systems. Divisions 15 through Division 20, those are reserved for future expansion. Division 21 is your fire alarm. 22 is plumbing, 23 HVAC. Division 24 is also reserved. Integrated automation on Division 25, electrical on Division 26, communications 27, safety and security on 28, 31 is earthwork, 32 exterior improvements, and finally 33 is utilities. So y'all make sure to get familiar with those divisions, because again, everything in construction revolves around these divisions. It's an easy way to break down construction and keep things consistent. So back to unit price estimate. So a unit price estimate is broken down in all these divisions. As you estimate, it just makes it easier for you to only focus on one thing at a time. And when your client is looking at your estimate, if, for example, if your client wants to see the cost for his security system, he'll go straight to Division 28 instead of having to look at all the items. He'll know where it's at on your estimate. Everything in construction is broken down using this CSI master format. The contract documents that are published during procurement usually have a set of drawings, a project manual, or what we call specifications. And these specifications are also broken down by division, following the CSI format. So Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, 4, so on. Again, just to keep things clean and consistent. So we'll talk about budget now a little bit. So the person responsible for managing the project, aka the project manager, he or she will manage the budget from conception to closeout. What you're looking at is an example of a project budget. It's what you're looking at. Some people refer to it as the project snapshot. Other people will refer to it as the project budget tracker. And it comes in many forms and varieties. Some owners, they really prefer to use softwares. There are a whole lot of softwares out there. There's SharePoint, there's Prolog, there's Procore, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But some owners are old school and they prefer to just use their own spreadsheet. You know, I'm old school and I like spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are nice. Now, the budget calculator that you're looking at right here, it's a sample from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. This budget tracker, it's a standard form for all their projects up in Massachusetts. And this is also very similar to many other spreadsheets that I've seen other owners working with. I deleted some information here just to keep it simple to you guys. So if you're given a project budget, on this case here, $3.3 million. $3.3 million is all you got to work with for the entire project. You know, it includes the costs for the feasibility study, the cost for the owner's representative, you guys, you know, all the office fees, the cost for the architect to design the project, the cost of all third-party consultants, the project contingency, and then finally the construction budget. So on this particular scenario, you have broken down all those costs, and it adds up to $3.3 million. That's all you have to work with to get what the owner wants. So at the beginning of the project, you assign each category with a number that is reasonable to that category. So to assign a number, let's say you want to assign a number to your architect. You use two things. One, historical data, and number 2, current market conditions. But you need to be in the business for a little bit to understand how to put a project budget together. But you're the one breaking down all those numbers. So from there, you do a cash flow analysis, right? You develop a cash flow chart that will help you project and manage your month-to-month expenditures. This is true project controls right here. Once again, you're using industry best practices and your knowledge to tell the owner and the stakeholders what you think this cash flow projection is going to look like throughout the project duration. So you break down these numbers here based on your experience. And then based on this projection that you created, it helps the owner secure the funds and then have those funds readily available for each period. So cash flow, you create a projection, and then as the project moves along, you start adding the actual expenditures. So every construction project looks like, if you look at every construction project in a chart, it looks like a bell format. See how it goes down and starts going up and up and up, and then down, down, down. Every project will look like a bell format, just like this one, right? You start with small expenditures, and as the project moves forward, you disperse more and more money. And then during mid-construction, you hit the peak of your cash flow. And then as construction nears the end, those expenditures start getting smaller and smaller. And then all of a sudden, you're done with construction. And it's just like housekeeping, right? At this point, you have very little expenditures at the end of construction. It's literally just housekeeping. Every project budget will look like this. Not the same numbers, but on a graphic, it will look like a bell. Now you have developed a budget model and the project has begun. You'll start receiving invoices, right? Every time you receive an invoice on your budget model, you will log into your expenditure chart. And your budget spreadsheet will adjust itself. All the tabs down here will adjust themselves, even your cash flow. So hopefully you have projected your expenditures correctly on your cash flow, because now you're going to compare your projection with the actuals. So I'm going to put, let's say the project started, I'm going to put $10,000 here. It's an invoice that I received from the architect. Actually, I'm going to do the other way around. I'm going to put $10,000 for the OPM. I'm going to do 10,000 each. So I added these invoices and immediately my budget tracker has updated itself. So it says I already spent 11% of my administration fee. I already spent 6% of my architect fee. So now what I do next, this was my first month, right? 10,000 OPM, 10,000 architect. I'm going to put that 20,000 right here. So now I'm comparing my actual expenditure with the original forecast. Right? I forecasted $9,000. I actually spent $20,000, and you can see that reflected on the chart. So something went wrong, right? But thanks to my project control and checks and balances, I picked up this discrepancy early on, and now I can investigate what went wrong, why, and then come up with a method to fix this in the next period or the next periods. But the goal is to stay within budget, right? Here's our budget again, 3.3 million. At the end of this project, you better not exceed it. You stay within 3.3 or under, don't go over. Okay. So, all right, so let's think of it this way. You went through design, you went through procurement, and now you have a general contractor on board with the cost that you projected on your construction project model. As the owner's construction manager, you'll also oversee the day-to-day activities of the general contractor, and you're overseeing construction, but you're overseeing and monitoring the whole project, right? Now you need to focus on the construction budget. The GC does, on a monthly basis, sends you a payment application. We call it requisitioning. Requisitioning is the periodic billing for the value of the work that was completed in that period, again, on a monthly basis. So if a contract for a project is a lump sum contract, let's say $1 million, how do you, as the owner's representative, know how much the contractor is allowed to bill every month? Do you divide the contract by the number of months in the contractor schedule? Well, that's smart, right? You divide that contract lump sum by the number of months. That's smart, and that makes sense, but that's not how we do it. At the beginning of the project, when the GC is given notice to proceed, the GC needs to break down the contract sum into small billable values of work, and this is called schedule of values. Schedule values, it's the decomposition of the work into tasks or groups. Groups of tasks that have a dollar value assigned to each of those tasks or groups. So eventually, after you break down all your construction tasks, and remember, you break them down by division, following the CSI division. Remember, I told you you would see CSI everywhere. So you break down your construction project by division. Look, division 1, that's the general conditions. That's the overhead and profit of the GC. It's the office supplies of the GC. It's the building permit, et cetera, right? Division 2, existing conditions, concrete activities under Division 3, masonry activities under Division 4, and you break all this down. You break your entire construction project. You break down your entire construction project, and the schedule values adds up and equals to that contract price, including the general contractor's fee, aka overhead and profit. So just know that the term schedule values, the word schedule, it's misleading. And that's because schedule values is on the financial side of the project. It's not on the time management side of the project. So the word schedule is just another word for a list of items. Schedule of values, which you're looking at, is called schedule values. So as the owner's representative, you'll receive a schedule of values prepared by the general contractor, and you will work with the general contractor in refining these schedule values until it meets some sort of acceptable breakdown that will make it easier for you, the project manager, to track the construction costs during the construction period. So when the general contractor sends you a payment requisition, you will review that requisition, looking at what he's billing, and you'll verify the accuracy of what he's billing through the schedule values. So if it's a massive project, let's say $50 million, and the general contractor is billing you on their very first month for $1.5 million, how do you, as a project manager, know the accuracy of everything that's billed for on that payment requisition? Well, there are a couple of things, right? One, you need to be familiar with what's going on out there, the day-to-day activities of the project. You need to have an idea of what the GC has accomplished during the past month. But even if you do those two things, you still won't know everything about the project. So this schedule values mechanism, it's nothing more than a breakdown of tasks that will help you, project manager or project controller, reveal the accuracy of the GC's requisition. So what's an acceptable breakdown and what are the rules here? Because I said earlier, you as the project manager, you'll receive the schedule values from the GC and you'll review it and work with the GC until it's acceptable for you. So what's an acceptable breakdown and what are the rules here? Well, I don't think there are any rules that I'm aware of. There are actually several books out there that teach you how to create a decent breakdown. But a breakdown just needs to be detailed. You know, the general contractor will try to give you schedule values with very few details. Some general contractors, they actually think that it's a benefit for them if the owner doesn't know everything he's billing for. But that's not true. They're only hurting themselves for not having a well broken down schedule values. For both the owner and for both the GC, both the owner and the GC, I think the main disadvantage of less detailed schedule values is that it provides less factual basis for you to determine the value of the work performed that month. So now when the GC is billing and you don't have a detailed schedule, you as the PM, you're reviewing that requisition, and then the work performed is more subjective on experience or opinion, right? And opinion, you know, it always leads to some sort of dispute and litigation. So that's why you need to have a broken down schedule values. So if the GC install his peers, he's only gonna bill for the peers, right? If he install CMU, right, and see how I broke down CMU by material and by labor. See how detailed this is. Let me show you all a real schedule values. This is a real schedule values, and this is what it looks like. This particular schedule values is for a $10 million project, and he has well over 300 tasks. The larger the project, obviously, the larger the schedule values. So I can imagine a $50 million project having 500 pages on a schedule values. Look, everything broken down by division, item by item, makes it easier for you to know if he's billing you correctly. You guys still there?
Yeah.
Yes, we're still here.
Barely. So before the general contractor sends
Hey,
you that
Marcelo,
payment, yes,
quick question. So with the schedule of values, is the labor always going to be considered under like a separate item or?
ideally, yes, ideally. Again, there's no rule. There's no rule. You break it down as much as you can, but it's always advisable that you break down the labor separate from the material, right? So, for instance, if I'm a general contractor and I receive the material, let's say I'm installing, let's say I'm doing a brick fence, a brick wall, and I'm the general contractor. I received that brick today. It arrived today, but I will not start building that wall until next month. Well, the brick's already on site, so I want to bill for that brick. So I have the brick material separate from the brick labor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So before the general contractor sends you that payment requisition, the GC will send you a draft of that schedule of values, and you'll review that draft. We call that draft a pencil copy. And you guys, you'll review that pencil copy, the schedule of values, and you make sure that all the work that the GC is billing is actual valid, right? Did he install that? What if that brick was delivered, but he's saying, oh, I'm also billing you $10,000 for labor. But you go out there, you see the brick on the pile, but you don't see the wall up. You'll ask him, why is it that you're billing for labor? I see the material out there, but there's no work in place. So this is called a pencil copy. So the GC will keep revising it until you're comfortable with everything that he's billing. And after you're comfortable with everything that is listed on the schedule of values, the GC will send you a final requisition. And G702, which is what you're looking at, this is the requisition for payment. And requisition consists of a cover letter, which is this form you're looking at, the AIA form G702. And this form shows how much the GC is billing. It shows what retainage there's been so far, and we'll talk about retainage in the future. And it shows you a short summary of everything that's been billed so far. And then this G702 is followed by the G703. And the G703, again, it's the TIBCO schedule values. And it's nothing more than the continuation of G702. Okay, so how do we put all of this into practice? Perhaps we'll have time today to put some of it into practice. If not, we'll do it next week. But at Dallas ISD, for instance, I'm a project manager, but we have project controllers, right? For instance, Siri and Purva are project controllers, and they are reviewing and assisting all of us in maintaining a healthy project budget. They assist us in putting together schedule values, the project schedules. They review estimates. They create estimates sometimes. And to be a good project manager, you need to be a good project controller. And to be a good project controller, you must be a good project manager. So PMs and project controllers, they're like budget and schedule. They depend on each other. One cannot leave without the other. A lot of times the project manager is both the project manager and the project controller, which is another reason why it's imperative to understand how it's done both ways. I have any more slides? I think that's all I got.